Good morning. I hope you are having a great morning. We are actually halfway through the summer here in the US. Well, more than halfway. In our community, kids are going back to school next week. So it feels like time is flying. And today I want to talk about what are common themes in play therapy. I think one of the things in the play therapy arena that I've noticed, and probably maybe you have too, I'm guessing you probably have noticed this as well. Summertime is actually a pretty slow time in the child therapy world, so to speak. Once school gets started, I think we start getting busier. So, one of the things that I was thinking about is summer's kind of a downtime a little bit for most of us. Although I have to say, when I was in private practice and providing play therapy, I did not have any downtime. I was always full, and then got even more busy once school started up. And maybe that's you as well. The thing to think about is as you're kind of gearing up towards school starting back up and your caseload's getting busier, I think it's important to think about how can you most effectively meet the needs of your clients to help them achieve these amazing results. And one of the things that I get asked all the time in play therapy supervision, so I have an online play therapy supervision group, play therapy consultation supervision, and I also do individual play therapy supervision, and I've done that for years. And now it's online. So if you're interested, I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. One of the things that comes up a lot, even in trainings that I conduct, how do you recognize play therapy themes? And so, as we're heading into the fall season, I thought this would be a really good episode to help you really hone in on some of the skills that are important in the play therapy arena, because the thing about play therapy is it is a huge paradigm shift from what we typically learn in graduate school. So if you're like me and mostly everybody else, your graduate school program didn't have a focus on providing therapy, counseling to children. And it's a huge paradigm shift because children have different developmental needs in the counseling process. And one of those big developmental paradigm shifts is the way in which children can use play to access healing. And so that's really the foundational element of play therapy, is helping your client access those therapeutic powers of play using a theoretical model. So all play therapy models are based in theory and they're informed by research. And then how you help your client access those therapeutic powers of play and make sense of what's going on in the play therapy session is an important part of skill development. And one of the things that's important in that skill development process is learning how to recognize themes. So last week in my live stream episode, I talked about how do you identify play themes. So what's probably important to take note of and what might not be as much. And then when you see something, how do you make sense of it? Last week, I talked about 5 things to consider to identify play therapy themes. So if that would be a really good episode. If you didn't catch that one last week, you can watch the replay. So if you're in my Facebook group, which is called Play and Expressive Arts Therapy Playground. If you're in my Facebook group, then you can go to the featured section in the group and all the replays will be in there. They're a little harder to find here on LinkedIn because you have to go through my activity feed. I also live stream into YouTube. So that's probably, unless you're in my Facebook group, that's probably a really easy place to find all of my replays. And my YouTube channel is called Kathy Spooner Renewing Hearts Consulting. And so you can go in there and watch the replay while you're on my YouTube channel. And if you find this information helpful, please like it and share it across your social media platforms. So this week, I really wanted to hone in on what are some typical themes that you find in the play therapy process, which brings me to the question of when you're thinking about your skill development and really honing in on these abilities so you can help your clients get some really amazing results in the play therapy process. What the heck are themes? What the heck are play therapy themes? Well, play therapy themes are ways in which children use play to access those psychological and social emotional issues that they're working through. Some of them are just typical developmental issues that all children work through. And then some of them are where they might have gotten stuck or maybe where they're struggling, and you can see what's going on with them by the way in which those things show up through their play. And the way that you make sense of that is really going to have a lot to do with the theoretical model that you're using. So there's a couple of things. Well, the big question I get asked all the time when I'm doing play therapy supervision and consultation, and even in the trainings that I do, is how do you recognize play therapy themes? So there's a short answer to that, and then there's a little bit more complicated answer to that, which is recognizing themes is a complex process. What I mean by that is it's based on your understanding of child development and what are typical child development milestones and how they're doing with that. It has to do with what theoretical model that you're using for play therapy, because the model identifies how you're going to conceptualize what's going on with your client, as well as how do you help them through all of the different phases of treatment and how you're going to use those therapeutic powers of play to help your young client access healing. So it's more than just this behavior equals that. It's not quite that simple, which is why I always recommend, if you are getting started in play therapy, or even maybe if you're getting a little stuck, it's really helpful to get a good play therapy supervisor or consultant to kind of help you figure out some of those things. Plus, it gives you another perspective to take a look at what's going on and give you some feedback that maybe you hadn't necessarily recognized. That being said, there are some things that are going to help you recognize what play therapy themes are. And some of those I talked about last week. And today I'm going to talk about what are some typical play therapy themes that you're probably going to see a few, usually it's a few, throughout the course of treatment. And so play therapy themes are the way in which the psychological and social emotional issues that your client is working through, whether those are typical developmental things that they're working through, that all children work through, and or areas where they're getting stuck and maybe they're struggling to really work through all their developmental stages effectively so that they can grow and mature and be really well functioning adults. So first and foremost, oops, I forgot. So I'm Kathy Spooner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a registered play therapist supervisor. I have been working with children and adolescents since 1990. Oh, actually, I first got into the mental health field in I think it was 1988, maybe 89, I forgot. But I've specifically been working in mental health for the last 30 years, specifically with children, adolescents, and families. That's what I've always been interested in. And so now at this point in my career, one of the things that I love to do is help the next generation of play therapists learn how to tap into your play therapy superpowers and get some amazing results for your clients using play therapy and expressive arts by helping you to essentially level up your play therapy skills. So I'm a firm believer that helping families and helping them resolve whatever is going on in your community really makes for a healthier community. So changing one family at a time in your community really is a way to make change for generations when you're working with children and families. So today, let's get started. Here we go. Play therapy themes. So I've talked a little bit about that. Essentially, play themes are the way in which children show us what's going on with them through their ability to access the therapeutic powers of play using the different, I call them tools in the playroom. And what that means is essentially the toys that you have, the art supplies, maybe you have musical instruments, maybe you're a dance and movement therapist, the words and the emotions that they express during the session, the way in which they interact with you gives a lot of information about the child. And also, if you're interested in that, you can watch more of last week's episode where I go more into depth about those things. Today, this week, I really want to focus on what are common themes that are seen in the play therapy process. I've identified 5 typical play therapy themes. These are not all encompassing, but these are typical ones that you tend to see in most of your play therapy sessions, and you may see different themes throughout the course of the play therapy process. First and foremost is aggression and power and control. So when you're seeing these issues, some of this is developmental when you're working with children, like school-aged children. They're working through issues of goodness and badness. One of the things that we all have to come to terms with, and we usually start working on this in our childhood, are issues of goodness and badness. So people are not all good and they're not all bad. Early on, children, that's part of what they're learning is I'm not all good, I'm not all bad, I'm both, and that's okay. So you'll see them working through some of those typical issues. They may be struggling with grief and loss. Grief is painful, and sometimes it'll manifest as aggression. There's a loss of control when you're experiencing grief. So aggression and power and control play themes may show up as feelings of helplessness and wanting to gain more of an internal sense of control. So here we're looking at locus of control issues, external control versus internal control. That also includes like emotion regulation. Initially, it's external, so children need the adults in their life to externally help them regulate emotions, learn how to comply with boundaries, limit setting is all external. And eventually the goal is children will be able to internalize those things, internalize self-control, internalize the ability to inhibit behavior, regulate emotions. So you may see some of those feelings of helplessness show up in the play themes. And then another one that I see pretty regularly as well are issues of fairness. This is a common thing that children work through, school-age children work through. This is life is not fair sometimes. Sometimes life isn't fair. That is reality. How are you going to manage that? So that's part of what children are having to work through and adults. I struggle with that sometimes too. I get so mad. And, we have to learn how to come to terms with that. What do I have control over? What don't I have control over? And sometimes life doesn't go the way that I want it to do. So sometimes life is unfair. So working through some of the anger around that, those are all pretty typical ways that you may see aggression and power and control show up in some of the things that may be feeding that, so to speak. Another play theme that regularly shows up in the playroom is working to establish a sense of mastery, which is also that sense of self-competence. This is a huge thing for self-esteem building, is that sense of I can and I'm capable. If you think about Erickson's stages of social emotional development, school age is industry versus inferiority. Basically, am I capable? Can I do this? And what does that mean about me if I can or if I can't? So, really building that sense of positive view of themselves, that positive self concept, my beliefs about myself are generally positive because I can do these things. You're looking at their ability to use the play process for some creative problem solving. I regularly encourage people that I work with in play therapy supervision and consultation is don't automatically jump to solve problems for your clients in the play therapy room. That's what adults do. Kids go to their grown-ups to fix things for them. And it's really helpful if we don't automatically jump to solving all their problems, because in the playroom, if you give them the opportunity, you can see how they use that creative problem solving process in the playroom to figure things out. Now, if they're getting to that point where they're really, really struggling and they just can't get it done and they really, really need your help, of course, you're going to jump in and help them to do that. I just recommend just don't automatically jump in there. And sometimes they don't want you to. Sometimes, and that's part of what you're looking for is do they automatically give up? So that feeling of helplessness, or do they give it a try and they try to work things out? Do they automatically expect if it's difficult, then you as the grown-up need to fix it for me? So I kind of look at that. Sometimes that gives you an indication of their window of distress tolerance. Is it a pretty wide window of distress tolerance, or is it pretty limited because they give up quickly and easily most of the time? That gives you some really good information about that. So you may also, feelings of helplessness and powerlessness may show up, which give you an indication of they don't have that I can and I'm capable belief about themselves. So another one is safety and security. You see this a lot in children who are struggling with anxiety, lots of fearfulness, that'll show up because essentially the way that I think about anxiety, anxiety is my ability to feel safe and secure in my environment. Can I go through and expect that I'll be okay, that life will be okay, that my loved ones will be okay? Am I safe? Are my loved ones safe? Will this work out? Will we be okay? And so that's a lot of the things that are underlying anxiety. What do we do with that distress of this is bad, I'm not okay, I'm not safe? How do we help them contain that? How does your client learn how to tolerate distress and reduce their anxiety and look at things a different way and feel safe and feel like their loved ones are safe? You'll see this a lot with children who have experienced traumatic experience, because trauma really destroys that ability to feel safe and secure. So you may see a lot of safety and security themes show up in the play. And then you're looking at over time, how do they navigate through that and develop more of a sense of I can and I'm capable and I am safe. They usually are working through some anger. So a lot of times you'll see a variety of themes show up in the playroom, and you are observing how those change over time, what facilitates that change. Another, the fourth thing to theme that I typically see, and we all tend to see these in the playroom, are nurturance needs. How do I get my needs met? So emotional needs, basic needs. If you have children who've experienced a lot of poverty and maybe they've had a lot of food insecurity or homelessness, then you may see that this is a theme that shows up pretty regularly early on in the play therapy process, because basic needs probably weren't met, which is why they're in the life circumstance that they're in, and they're struggling. The family is struggling. Sometimes you'll see emotional needs, like how am I getting my emotional needs met? You'll show some of those themes show up in the playroom. And essentially they're looking at, do I matter? And do my needs matter? Do my needs matter? And can I get my needs met? And then the fifth category that tends to show up in the play therapy process are those needs for essentially love and belonging, connection, attachment, my sense of belonging. Am I loved? Am I lovable? Do I belong? Am I accepted and valued? So you'll see some of these show up in relationships, the way in which relationships manifest. Like a lot of times that may show up with doll play or in the dollhouse. I see that happen a lot in the dollhouse. Puppets, the way different characters get played out if they're telling stories. You'll see some of this in their art, or different ways in which they're using the play process to show those themes. So you're looking here to understand how they interact with peers. So if you're watching through the play therapy process and they're playing out, like this one comes up in the dollhouse a lot, and they have different people, and you're watching how the people figures interact. I had a little girl years ago. She would use the Barbies and the Kens. I would see what was her, I guess, her experience of what she was trying to figure out about relationships through their interactions. You can see it in the puppets sometimes if your clients like to use the puppets. So really they're looking at peer relationships. Like I once had a little boy who really struggled with peer relationships. And I could see him working through some of those challenges that he was experiencing through the use of food. And he was a chef and I was his sous chef, and he was yelling at his audience about how incompetent they were. So different ways that those themes may or may not show up. They'll typically show up at some point, somehow. It's also about the way they interact with you in the playroom as well. And do they engage with you right away? Do they keep you at a distance? So all of those things give you an idea of what's going on in their play as well. The other thing about the the playroom and using play therapy and recognizing some of these themes is you get a sense of your child client's personality, the way in which they work through things. You get a sense of their tolerance for distress. You get a sense of how they interact. Are they a slow to warm up to people child, or they build relationship pretty quickly? All of do they feel the ability to work through problems and figure things out? Do they engage you? Do they not engage you? You're looking at all of these things in the play therapy process. So that is it for today. Just to recap, what are play therapy themes? Play therapy themes are essentially the way children use the play process to work through whatever psychological and social emotional issues that they're trying to work through. So just like adults do that in the regular adult therapy process, children are doing that too. They are doing it in a different way. They are using those therapeutic powers of play and the play process to help them work through. And so the way that they're doing that is how that shows up in the play behaviors, what they say, what they do, what do they play with, how do they interact with you. So that, and then you'll notice those. You typically notice over time any changes and things like that. So there are typically 5 common themes in that you may see play therapy themes: aggression, power and control, the sense of competence and mastery, the safety and security issues, nurturance and getting their needs met. And then the 5th one being their connection, attachment, their sense of belonging. Am I loved? Am I valued? So that is it for today. If you are interested, I do have an online play therapy supervision consultation group. We meet twice a month on Saturdays. The thing about the group is you have, I call it vicarious learning, or that the ability to learn from what other therapists, play therapists, are doing with their clients and the way in which different themes show up in the playroom. May look different based on different children. So in a group modality, you get to see how that manifests with not only your clients, how it manifests with other play therapist clients. So I think it makes for a really good learning experience when you can see how things work from different perspectives and the way in which people do things differently. We talk a lot about figuring out what's going on with your clients, and how, once you figure out what's going on with them, what types of play therapy interventions and modalities are going to help to address that, so that you can get some really amazing treatment outcomes, some positive treatment outcomes for your clients. And I think that's really why we get into this field in the first place, is because we want to help, and we want to help people achieve a good life, essentially. And so working with children, that's going to look different, because it play therapy works differently than traditional talk therapy. So if you're interested, I do have space available in my online supervision and consultation group. I also do individual play therapy and play therapy supervision and consultation. So if you're interested, you can contact me. I will put a link. Hey, glad you were able to join us. Good. I'm glad it was helpful for you. And this is one of the things that I find people ask a lot about are the play themes. So I'm curious. I think you pronounce your name Parth. I'm sorry if I pronounce that wrong. I like to make sure I get people's names right. So I'm curious, what age do you work with? Are you working with children now using play therapy? So if you're interested in my online supervision consultation for play therapy for the group or the individual, what I recommend is to schedule a video call with me, and that way we can make sure that it's a good fit for you. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Oh, good. I'm glad you found it helpful. That's awesome. I will put a link in the comments to schedule a video call with me because I think it's important to make sure that you're able to get your needs met. I can give you an idea of how things work and make sure that is a good fit for you and make sure we're a good fit for each other. So I will put a link if you'd like to schedule a free video call to see if the online supervision group or the individual supervision for play therapy is a good fit for you. I will post that in the link. You can also go to my website and find the link there. There's a few different links, but you'll look for the free 30-minute video call. That is my website. And I will see you next week. So my website is rrhcounseling.com. And you want to go to the supervision page. While you're there, if you want, I have some upcoming trainings. I have an online digital course now that's available on demand. So you can look at that. It's play therapy using expressive arts with adolescents. And then I also have another training coming up, which registration is going to be open for that soon. That's an using art therapeutically with children and adolescents in the play therapy process. So both are focused on using art with children and adolescents. Slightly different focus for both those trainings. So go check out my website. And if you found this episode helpful, please like and share it on your social media. And go hop over to my YouTube channel and watch the replays from last week. Parth said, yes, that was correct. Oh, yay, I pronounced it right. Primarily with behavior therapy, children with developmental disorders. Oh, okay, that's a really interesting population. And probably play therapy is going to be really effective with that population. If you use some of the art interventions too, can get at some of the social emotional things they may be struggling with, like anxiety and things like that. And hey, Cinna, glad you were able to be here today. Check out last week's episode too on YouTube. I talked about how to identify play themes there. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.